Okay, and share my screen. Okay, so I think this is the code, like starting code without having anything done, just as I downloaded it. I don't think I have anything here that was not on the repository. And let me start it. Something is already running, or probably have some other. Yes, okay. Just running on another port. I'm going to put this here. So that's what we get if we just download it, and we going to open also the console so that any errors will show. But I'm going to put it on the bottom. Here. And just, I want to just keep the console. Okay. So right now we have a couple of issues, but just that there are some undefined and unused things, basically. So it's warnings more than errors, that this is defined but never used, and this is not used, and this is not used. Okay, so did you manage to like download it and run it, and you see this simple form if you don't do anything? I think so, because we also had some issues when we tried this with this version of React, maybe some dependencies on some warnings that you got, but I think you managed to make it run, right? So we have this basic, we have the structure the same that we had also in Vue. We have our root component that is the app.js. And we have these two components, the admin view and the user view. The admin view should be the form, and the user view, it should be our grid. And so let's check the app view. First of all, we load the two components, the admin view and user view here, so that we will be able to use them later. Right now, you see this is gray because it's not used, and we only use the admin view. And remember that each component, it's a function. So the first thing that we do is define a function called app. And we have some data that we use, the use state hook for defining this data in React. So we will need an isadmin to store whenever which button is clicked. So if we click the admin button, or if we click the user button, so that we know in which view we are. This is a Boolean variable, isadmin. And then the projects will be the array where we'll be storing all our projects. So for now, we forget about this a bit to add a new project. And the thing that we return here from this component is just the two buttons and the admin view. And the two buttons is this one, the admin and the user. Right now, nothing is happening if I click on one or the other. But they do have this on-click event defined already that it calls the handle change view function with true or false, which it's this function here, the small handler, which will take whatever value we will pass, true or false, and we'll set this isadmin variable that we have to true or false. So isadmin is a state variable, and in order to modify it, we use this setter function, that set isadmin function. So if I want to just set isadmin to true or to false, We cannot do it like here on click, for example. This will not work. We cannot just say on click is admin true. Okay, so this is what we try to do, basically. This is what the on click should do. When I click it, it should set my is admin variable to true. But this doesn't work like this in React. First of all, because we cannot directly modify a state variable, we need to use this setter function. So we would need to use the set is admin. So first of all, we would need to do set is admin true if we wanted to do it right here, okay, in order to modify it. And then the other thing is that we cannot call a function directly on a handler. We need to just define a function that will be called when the button is clicked, because if we do it like this, it means that it's automatically called when the page loads. It doesn't wait for the click. So that's why we put it in a format of an arrow function. And in fact, if I do it like this, it will also work. Now it's okay. Now it works. I don't even need to define another function, this handle change view, because this does exactly this thing. The same thing is happening here. Either if I do it like this or if I do it like this, they are equivalent. Here I'm directly calling in line 20, I'm directly calling the set is admin to true. And on the line 21, I'm calling another handler function, which will call set is admin. So I think to simplify it, we could also just directly put set is admin to false here, and we could skip this function basically. So with this, we have the button just modifying the isAdmin variable. And we need this because we want to show one view or the other, depending on if isAdmin is true or false. So we have this view now. Let's load the other view as well, the user view. For the moment, I don't pass anything to it. So I load the user view, and now I see the two views. This is the admin view, this line, and this line is the user view. And both of them are visible right now because I don't have any if-else thing happening. So if I want to show one or the other, depending on the isAdmin, I should have some if statement. And for this, I need to say first that what I'm going to write here now, it's not HTML, it's JavaScript. So I'm putting the curly braces. And remember, I cannot do an if in here, but I need to use the ternary operator if I want to use some if-else case here. So my if-else should be, I'm going to write it in a general way. So it would be something like, depending on the value of isAdmin, then do one thing if true, and then do another if false. Okay, so depending on if isAdmin is true, we want to do one thing, that is show one view, or to do another thing, show another view. So I'm just going to replace, what do I want to do if it's true? Show the admin view. So I'm going to replace this thing with admin view. This is what I want to do if it's true. I want to show the admin view, add some spacing. And this is what I want to do if it is false, to show the user view. So it's just adding some spacing, some line breaks to make it more visible, but the idea is the same. So depending on the isAdmin variable, I'm showing one or I'm showing the other. And if I save it, you see that now I see the admin view, because the isAdmin by default at the beginning is true. When I initiate this variable here in line 7, I initiate it to true. And when it's true, I'm showing the admin view. And when I click the user, by clicking the user button here on line 17, I'm setting it to false. And then this if else case will show me the user view. Okay, so I have these two things, showing one or the other. questions, interrupt me at any time, right? If you feel that some of this is not make sense, or you tried it and it still didn't work or something. Let's add also a bit of design on the app CSS file. So remember that in React, we need to add it somewhere on a different way. So I'm going to put the two buttons inside the navigation tag. So, nav. And I'm going to put the two buttons up here. And put some styling on the nav bar so that text align may be right, so that the buttons move there. And I could add some, maybe, let me check what this does to separate it a bit. Maybe some background color. Gray. Well, it's a bit ugly. Some other gray. And in fact, I would need margin better than this, I think. Okay. I will also make everything, this part centered on the center. So for this, I'm going to put on this div that encloses everything, class name. And here, our wind. Okay. Going also to put some margin here. It's margin bottom. So that this is a bit separated. Okay, and I could add some spacing around the buttons. I will also add an active class that will make the text color, so color red. So I'm going to add this class to the button that is clicked so that I know which button is clicked. Okay, so right now I'm not using this active class, but I want to add it conditionally as well to the buttons. So the button that is clicked should show the letter red. So for this, I'm adding a class name, but not directly. So if I just wanted to add the active class name, I would do it like this. And now this button is always red. Okay, so if I just want to add it always, it's like this with the string, the quotes and then the class name. But I don't want to always have it active, so I don't want it to be always red. I want it to be conditionally depending on if its admin is clicked or not, if its admin is true or not. So here, depending on its admin, I'm going to add the class name active. So let me see false. attribute. And the opposite should be here. So if it's not is admin, then active. Let me check. Unexpected, unexpected this. Okay. Ah, here I have the class name missing. Sorry. You can do it also with a ternary operator. So if it's admin, then I put the active class, else null. And so here, if it's not admin, I will add the active class, and else I will have null. So if this Boolean indicates that I'm on the admin view, then I add the active class to this button so that it shows red. And if I see it now, when I change the view, then one or the other shows red. So inside here to add, conditionally add some class, we still use this ternary conditional operator, the same that we used when we wanted to check like an if else to show one view or the other. And we can use the same Boolean that we are modifying, is admin. Okay, so I think with this, we will have most of the step one done. Let me check again the README. So for step one, we had that clicking on admin should show the admin view and clicking on users should show the user view, and add some styling so that the current page the user is on should be clear. So this active class, and we can also add some styling to make it a bit more nicely looking. Okay, so since you had some issues with this, maybe, I don't know, you want to ask or show something that was not working, if you tried something similar.
Anna, if I want to, because my button had other classes, I didn't do this part. I forgot to do the red. But my button had other classes, so I was trying to add this ternary operator or well, this rendering, but I cannot find a way to leave the other classes there also.
Yes. So when you also want to,
I don't know how to write it.
With other classes, the structure here becomes a bit more big because it's going to be like a big string. That's one part of the string is going to be ternary, but the rest of the string should be like fixed. So it should be kind of not going to be like this, but other class, and then maybe, sorry, some other class. And then you would need to have the ternary somewhere in between. Like right now, it's not working like this. So this part, it should be the conditional. And what you do for this, you have two options. You can, so this can be like an object where the different classes are different properties of the object, or you can use the backticks, the, how is it called? I always forget the name. With the backticks for string when we want to replace part of the string with JavaScript. So let me just find additional render class. So that the class name. Let me just find the syntaxes, which is a bit. No, conditional render class, not. So with the ternary, So here you have it, the class name. And then in here, again, you open the brackets because whatever is going to be here is JavaScript. And this is a backtick way of replacing this with a string where part of the string is fixed. So this first one is the class that you always have. And then the other part of the string, this part will be the conditional one. So this will be replaced with the string when it's going to be evaluated. So let me put it a bit bigger. I'm sorry, not that big. Yeah, so you use this way. So the part that is the conditional that we had now, this active, this is the active part. And you use this dollar symbol that we were using to replace something that is a variable with a string when we use the backtick way of writing a string. And then the template literal, that's what I always forget. That's what the backtick is actually called, the template literal format. And then you can have more. Where it says banner, you can have one next to the other, as you would put classes one next to the other, and just one part of it, replace it with a conditional. I can, let me send you this also here on chat, just in case you want to check it. Okay, more questions on this, on what you did not, I don't know, it did not work, or did you try, Gabby, this kind of like a conditional? Well, I don't know if in class name or in here on the admin user view.
Yes, I did something very similar, but every time I got an error message and I got so frustrated, so I stopped trying and I just deleted everything and I just changed the color of the buttons and that was it. So yeah, it's
But the color of the buttons, you mean like this conditionally?
no, I didn't do it conditionally. I just did like this. What we did also in Vue, that this bootstrap button, like different colors.
So
yeah.
Here, if I wanted to also use the bootstrap, and then I would need to add this syntaxes. So the backticks. So let's say that this is a button. I use the bootstrap button class, and also I'm using this active or not. So this one will be the conditional. And I have one that is button, and then this one is the conditional. But I think I see don't change. So I think I don't insert, I have not inserted bootstrap here. Let me insert it. So just in case I want to use it, I need to insert bootstrap from the CDN. Okay, so now I see that this changed to button. The only problem is that then Bootstrap has its own classes, and maybe it has some other class called active, so it will not allow me to see the changes easy. So then the CSS will interfere with Bootstrap one and the one that I have defined here. So I need to find, I think there is a button active, maybe Bootstrap. Let's see if there is one. No. If there is some active, so that I use that one from Bootstrap, because if not, then I cannot see the red color. I just see this other change. But that would be the way also to try this adding, so Python primary, let's say, adding different classes, one next to the other, and just one of them being this conditional one. So, okay, let me check. How was it? Is admin button? Okay, so the part that was, it was either button data or button warning with a conditional. So instead of having this if button, say button picture. So what you could do is that you always have the button if you use Bootstrap, and then if it's admin, then you use maybe button danger. And if it's not admin, you can use button primary. And so then you use the Bootstrap colors to change it. And I'm going to do the same here, but reverse it. So if it's not admin, something like that. Whatever you prefer. So if you prefer the normal CSS or you prefer to play with Bootstrap, this is up to you.
For the button, rather than using set as admin, I use the handler function and then put the set function inside. Is there one way that's kind of preferred over another way, or is that like overcomplicating it?
This one you say?
Yeah.
Like instead of using this, you use the handle function that was coming with the program?
Yeah, I had a separate handle function, like handle change view, and
Yes.
passed the isAdmin variable as and like another function inside a function. Is that?
So it's you can do it also, yes. So handle, I think it was handle change view. So there was something coming like this, handle change view, and then you get some how was it? Some parameter that the admin, and then you set it. And in here you set isAdmin to what you pass to it. And then instead of using the set isAdmin here, you just use the handle change view in here and you pass it. So it's not that it's overcomplicating it. You can do it also like this. You create an additional function. You could do it here because this is just one line. So you could do it directly here as we are doing it. But it's also like more clear. So for each event, you create a handler function. So this is also good. I think this is the same now. It works exactly the same. So you can either call the function, pass it a variable that's to be true, the Boolean variable to be true, and then the handler function will take this value and will use the setter function to update the isAdmin to that function that you passed. Or you can also do it in here. So I will leave both so that you see both. Okay, so now we have the admin view and the user view. The user view is nothing for now. It should be the grid. So at some point at the user view, we should be passing the projects as props. Okay, so we need to think a bit the structure. Let's check it here. So something like this. We have our app. And then we have the admin view and the user view. The admin view is our form. And the user view is the project grid and the feature section. So then maybe we need to think where each part of the data, each piece of the state should be saved. So the admin view is the form. So that means that it will be creating a new project at some moment. It will be taking the input, it will create a new project. Then probably in admin view, we need to have something like new project data, piece of data inside the admin view, so that from the input, we create and we store this new project, and then find a way to send it upwards to the app to store it. And then the user view needs to show all projects. So it should have access to the project data, to the project array. So since it needs access to the all projects, we should be able to pass down to the user view from the app, the all projects as a prop. So since the user view needs to access this and the admin view needs to modify this, the way to store it, it's on the lowest common ancestor as we were doing in view. And here on app is where we will be storing our array of projects. And from the admin, we will be sending upwards a new piece of information to update it. And from the app, we will be sending downwards through prop to the user view, the project array. So that's what we have here. We have the projects array here on the app. And so we need to send it to the user view. So in order to send it, I'm declaring that with the name of all projects, I will be sending downwards the array all projects. So this name, all projects, make reference to, well, it's called projects actually. So I'm going to change this. So this makes reference to the piece of data that we have in here. It's the variable, that's the named variable of the state that we have here on the app. And this is a name that we set, and that's how it's going to be expected on the user view. So the user view is going to expect a prop, a variable, and a parameter that is called all project, and that has this value. And so if I go on the user view, now it's nothing. You see, it's just importing React. In fact, this line nowadays, we don't even need it. We could delete it. And so it's just a function, and I'm exporting this function so that I can use it. And it returns, right now, just returns a div. But so if I want to show the information, I'm going to be expecting a prop. So all props are stored under the props object. And in this case, the prop that I'm sending, it's called all projects. Remember that here on the user view, I'm sending an all projects array. And so the user view, it's going to have somewhere a props.all projects array that it can use. And let's say I try to show something from this array. So let's say I want to show, so I cannot just say props.all projects because it's an array. Let's say, I don't know, element, I want to show an element 0 of that array on the user view. I think now it's empty, so it's not going to show anything. So let me see what is the error. When using JSX, search for the keywords. Let me just add this import def from React because I think this one is using some older version, and okay, it gives me an error with this. So I cannot see anything because my all projects array is empty, but let's add something so that just I have something to show. Project here starts with an empty array, but let's imagine I had something like a string. So first project, and so it has at least one element. And so when I go here, I see the user view, and I also see the prop that I passed down. I passed down this array, the projects array, on the user view through the props. And so I can see it. Let me just put it in a different paragraph. I can access it and show it. And I could show all the projects with a for loop, etc. The same as we do for the arrays that we have seen, that we use a map to show all the elements of an array. And we will do that next. But just a reminder that when we want to pass information down to a child, we use the props and we pass the information like this, and then we can access it. Every part of the information that we pass is part of the props object. And the other way of doing it is by constructing directly the object here and just say that I'm expecting and all projects variable, and then just use all projects directly instead of repeating props all the time. So later, this will be a full array. Right now, doesn't have anything. And then I'm going to see how to show all the elements in the user view. Or I can do it now. So let's say I will add some more information here. I have my first project, my second project, some string. It's not important. And so when I want to look through an array and show all the information, the way of doing it in React is by using a map. Okay, map higher order function. So I'm taking the all projects. Let me create a new div actually for this. So this div, I'm going to call it grid, where will be my grid of projects. And so instead of just showing the project 0, I want to show all projects. And for this, I'm using the map higher order function that it takes each item of the array that I'm getting. So this all project is an array. I'm getting each item of this. And for each item, I'm going to be creating, let's say, a separate div. I'm going to be showing the item inside the different div. Now, since my array is an array of strings, so remember I have initialized this to a very simple array with just a couple of strings. So it's just an array of strings. They're not objects. So each item is a string. And I just want to see one list of the items of this array. And with the map operation, I'm just looking through them. This should be in curly brackets so that it makes reference to this variable. And so like this, I have the different elements of the all projects array. So, and remember that we have this warning that whenever I create a list, whenever I have a map used in React, I need to add some key property so that it doesn't complain. And I can use the index. It's not the most recommended way. It's a way to quickly get around it, but it's better if you use some kind of unique ID. So for now, I just use the index as a unique key because I don't have any objects. I don't have any ID yet. I think we have seen these things last week also with the coffee app, so that we get an array, we pass it down as a prop, and then we show different elements of the array by using the map. Let me just close some of these things. Okay, let's do a bit of the form then. So we have this simple form on our admin view. And from the admin view, let me see, where is the form? So as we were saying, the admin is going to be creating a new project. In the admin view, it's a form. We will be creating a new project. That's why we have one variable, one piece of state variable here. That is this project object that we're going to be creating, and we're going to fill it with a URL, a title, and a description. We initialize it to an empty object. And this is the project that we're going to create on the admin view and then send upwards to be stored eventually in the all projects array. Forget about this for a moment. So I'm going to comment it. The syntax is here. I know it creates a bit of confusion. We will see it better. I just want to simplify it and just use this one piece of information. If instead of having a whole object, let's just say that my project is just one string. So I'm going to use this simple field and just add a name to add on the array. So a very simple form, since I just have one input, then I'm just going to take this title and add it to the array. So let me change this a bit. And leave this and create a new change. Change. Sorry, it's an arrow function. And the input change. So here we have a form, just one input. And the other thing that we said with forms, I think we already mentioned last Monday, but today we will see a bit more things on forms, is that for each input element, we need to have two things. We need to have a value that we connected with one of our state variables. So in this case, value, it will be reflecting what is the value of the project variable that is up here. And for now, it's just an empty string. And then we need to have a way that on change, whenever a user inputs information in this form, we handle this change and update this variable. So the handle input change should be using the setter function for this and update the project with the new value. So this handle input change function, it's going to use the set project setter function that we have here, the one that we defined here, to make sure that now the value of this project is going to be the event target value. So whatever the user inputs, it's going to be stored inside the project when there is any change. I'm getting the value from the event object. Remember, event is a big object happening whenever some event is happening. So like a click or an input or a change. And so on change, so we use this listener on change, and whenever some change is going to happen on the input field, then an event is going to be triggered, and the value of that event, which is the one that's going to be stored on the input field, we're getting it out from the input field, we store it on the project. So if we try it, let me also like console log this as well so that we see it. So, hello, you see that with each click, it's updating. And so at the end, we have whatever the user has input stored already on the project variable. So this is a way in React, this is a way of getting the information from the user per input. For each input, we store it to some variable. This is just for storing it. Then if we want to send it upwards, we will see what we do on submit. So on submit, then we have another event. So on the form, the complete form, we may have more input fields. On the form, we have some submit event. And then when we submit, we want to pass the data back to the parent. We will see this later. But for now, we just want to get this input and store it on the project and see it. Okay, and so if I have outside the form, let's say I'm just showing project, so I should be able to see whatever I pass on the form, it's stored on the project variable, and then I can use this project variable for whatever I want. One of the things I want to do is send it upwards to the parent. So if instead of just one input, I have more inputs. Let's say I have another one. First one is the title, and the second one is the URL. So if I want to store two inputs, I can do two things. I can have two state variables. So I can have one for say project title and another one called project URL. And then I need to have different setter function, one to update the project title, one to update the project URL. So I'm going back to the form, and this one would be the project title. And this one would be project URL. And then I get the event and I update the equivalent information. The only thing is that now I need two different event handlers, because in here I have two different setters. One is for project title and the other one for the project URL. So this could be handle input change on the title, and this would be handle input change on the URL. Of course, you understand this is not going to work like this. We are going to make it a bit more generic, but this could work. So for each one of our inputs, we have a different setter, a different state variable, and then we have a different handler function. One to update the title and one to update the URL. And let's see if I just show things. So form input. I'm just going to show the project and the project URL here so that we see it. And then the project URL, something else. So like this, I can update and store both pieces of information to these two variables, the project title, project URL, which are separate variables. So I need to find some way to make this a bit more generic. But before I'm going to the generic, any questions on the form part? So even if I want to update just one thing, not like make it more complex or creating an object or something. On how this works, so that I need to define this value, set it, assign it to one of the variables, and then I have the handler to modify this variable using the setter function.
Do you need a handle input change for each input field, or can you do like one handle function that includes all the input fields? Is that possible to simplify it, or no? Is it not?
Yes, we can make it simpler. So in fact, the one that was coming with the code, this one that we're going to use, it's a way to make it more generic so that with one handler function, you can update all inputs. Not all together, but I mean that you can use the same one for each one of the inputs, and then you don't have to rewrite because it's actually the same thing. It's just what it changes is it's which setter you are using. Have you tried the form that was coming with the admin view to just check how to input some information and maybe see it or use it?
I did it with using the function that takes them all together there.
Yes.
I was slightly confused about the words, the state, in terms of, I know you can like what state refers to.
Here.
Yeah, like trying to wrap my, I know you can, I tried changing the wording, so I know like you can kind of play around with that, but what it actually means abstractly. I'm kind of struggling to kind of.
Okay, we'll get to that now. So right now we have a form with different fields, but each input element is a different item, it's a different variable. So we have these different variables, and we can have more for the description, and another one for the ID, and another one for something else. But the most common way, if we want to have like one project, is to store all the information together in the form of an object. Because there are all these elements are related to one with the other. So they are elements of the same project. And instead of using them like this separately, the recommended way is to have like an object as it was coming, basically the code. So we have an object that has a title that at the beginning I just set it to an empty string, and a URL, also an empty string, description or whatever other fields I want to add. So instead of these two or three elements, so if I had a description, it would also be a third element here. Instead of this, I want to create one object. And then that means that whenever I have one input field, now it's not project title like one variable, one separate variable, but this is related to this property of the object, to the project title, and this is related to the project URL, so to this property of that project. And so when this change, I want to change the title, and this change, I want to change the URL. So even if I keep two different handlers, let's say how we would do that. To change the title of that project, now my handler, it's not set project title, it's set project. So let me go a bit up. We have this handler, set project. And what I want to actually do here is to set just one of the properties of the object. So I would actually want to do something like this. So when I want to update the title, set the project title to this value of the form. And then when I want to update the URL, I would want to do something like this. So project.url equals to this. This is what I would like to do, but we have a couple of issues here. In React, we cannot alter objects like this. So React will not understand that this is going to be a new object when we just update one property of the object. It expects a whole new object. So if I don't replace the old object with the new object, it will not understand that a change has happened so that it re-renders the page. So if we just updated strings, we could replace a new string with an old string. But if we want to replace the update objects or arrays, we would need to create a new object. So let's new project. That this new project will have all the properties from the old object, and one of the properties will change. So this new object, it should be new project, should be the project title. Now I want to update it, and I want to keep the other properties as they were. So the project URL should be as they were, and the project description should be as it was. Sorry, the title, the URL, and the description. And then I'm going in the set project, I just replace it with this new object. So this is how it would work in React. If I want to update one of the properties of the object, so in this case, I just want to update the title. I need to create a new object that will update the title. So it will set the title to this new value that I get from the input and keep the other ones from my original variable, and then replace it. And so we have seen a syntax for making this a bit shorter, which is the spread operator. So instead of this, I'm just going to comment it. New project. We can use the spread operator and say copy the old project. So this ... project, this makes reference to the object that is stored up here, up here. So this project, I make a copy of this project, whatever it was written in it, and then I replace the title with the new value that I want to give it. So this is the equivalent to this. It's making a copy, and whenever I want to replace one part of it, I just replace it. And then again, I use the set project to update my project. So is this syntaxes? Any questions here? So of course, here on the URL part, in the URL handler, we would have to do this as the same. We would still have to create a new project. That would be a copy of the old one. And in this case, we would just replace the URL with the event target. And then we use the set project to update our project, again with a new project. So we made one part of the progress, because instead of creating different variables for each one of the field items, we create one object and we update this object every time. So all our information is stored together, it's grouped as we like it to one object. And so from the form fields, we just simply update one part of the object with these handlers. By creating a new project, we use a copy of the old one and we update the piece of information that we want to update. So the other thing that what we want to do is to make it a bit more generic. So if we see these two functions, we see that they are exactly the same. The only thing that is changing is this part here. So in one case, I update the title, and in other case, I update the URL. But all the other is exactly the same. I'm using the event target value. I use the same setter function. I create the same project. So there must be a way to make this a bit more generic, because also, like if I want to create a handle input change description, I could simply copy this exactly the same, and it will be another handler that instead of the URL, I will be updating the description. And that's the only change. So instead of having these different handlers where all that it changes is this part, I can make it also one step further to make it a bit more generic. This name here of the property that I need to change also comes from the event. So the event is an object that has a lot of information inside it. When a handler is happening, when a click is happening or a change, when every event is happening, this event stores a lot of information on where the event has happened. And one part of the information that it stores is also the name of the input field that was clicked. So in this case, the name is title, and in this case, the name is URL. And if I also have a description part, then the name I could be description. So the event will get me the value, but will also get me which field, if it is the title field, the URL field, or the description field that it was changed. So I can use this. And let me just console log it for now. So event.target.name. So that we see in its case, this should be the title and this should be the URL. So in each field, we refresh. I have somewhere something that I have not changed. Project title is not defined. Ah, yes, down here. Okay. This. So whenever I click in here, you see the console log says title, which is the name of the field that is being actually like modified. And if I click here, this should be the URL. So now I'm knowing that the event is happening on an input field that it's named URL. So I did not update this part. This is project description, the labels, they all say project title. So if I write something here, it should console log that the input field that was clicked is the description field. So I have this information from the event target name. So to make it a bit more generic, what I can do is instead of say title, say event target name. So, but in order to replace this with this variable in objects, remember I need to place it inside square brackets so that it knows that now it's not the property of the object that is called event target name like a string, but it's a variable that the value of this is what the property of the object is going to be. Right, so for example, remember that if we have project.name, I can set it something like first project. This can also be project name. Not name, title. The property is called title in our object, right? And this title, it's also what this variable stores. The event target name, when I click on the title field, this is replaced with the string title. It shows that I have clicked on title. So I can actually also use project event target name. So these three things are equivalent. All three things make reference to the property of the object that is called title. I can use it like this, I can use it like this, or I can replace what this variable holds, which is the string title, and also update it like this. So if all these three things are equivalent, that means that in here, I can use this way and update only the part that I'm interested. So that means that by using this, I can make exactly the functions being exactly the same. So every time I'm updating the property that I got from the event, from the input, what was clicked, with the value of it. So the property name with the value of it. And now you see that all three handlers are the same. And so I can just replace them with one handler that I can use in all fields. So instead of having handle input change title, handle all the different ones, I'm just going to call it handle input change. Going to remove these three. And this generic one can be used on all three input fields. So this handler is going to take the event, and from the event is going to take the name that will show me which item was clicked, if it was the title, if it was the URL or the description, so which input was clicked, and also the value. So from the event.target.name, I'm going to take this, that will indicate me which part of the project it's going to be updated, and then to which value I'm going to update it. And so this, from the event, we will get this information. And so with the handle input change, we create a new project, we copy the old project, and we update the part that the event indicates with the value that the event indicates. Okay, so this we could actually, and this is our generic handler. So then this and this are the same. What is happening here is the same that is happening to the code that you had, just that for not repeating event target and event target, what we did here was at the beginning, we just said that value equals to event target value. So that then I can use this variable name in here instead of writing all of it. Right, so I replace this with this, and the same with name. So I just create a variable so that I don't have to write the whole thing here. And so this is like that. And then in the set project, I actually can either create the project before and then pass it, or do this in here. So what this does is that in the same setter function, it already creates a new project from the previous one. So I can replace this new project with this way of doing it. This is where you had some question, Mele, so how this would be done. So when we do this, let me just write it. So this is the first way. I'm going to like option. And then on B, I use the set project function, and in this setter functions in state in React, whenever we want to update a state based on the previous state, we can use the arrow function inside it, so that we say that I get the previous state. I can call this whatever I want. This is just the name I give to the to name the previous state. So I take the previous state and I create the new state based on the previous. So the new state that I'm creating, it's an object that will be a copy of this previous state. And I will be updating just a part of it, the same as I was doing here. So I will be updating one part of it. And I need to put it inside the parentheses. That's how it works in the arrow functions. So that means that I'm going to take whatever was the previous state, the project, what was written before, and use it to create a new copy and update a part of it to create a new object that will now replace my state. So I can call this whatever I want, because this is a local variable that it's happening in here. It doesn't have to have the name that I have here. So I don't need to use this because I'm not replacing this with this. It's a way that the setter function knows that the information that I pass here, the first argument, makes reference to the previous state. So here it was called state. You can call it previous state. You can call it project. It doesn't, whatever helps you understand it better. So I'm taking the previous and I'm creating a new object from it and I replace part of it. So these two things are equivalent and both work. And this is what we had here. Going to actually delete it. It's exactly the same now. And with all this, we managed to connect our form with the new project, this project that the form is going to be creating. Let me put some CSS also on the form so that it shows a bit better.
Can I ask a question about the input
Yes.
form or the input fields? Right now, I noticed on yours it's doing it too, but on mine it's sort of updating the object with every keystroke. And so when I type something in, it adds each letter, and then I'm console logging it, so it's like showing each console log with each letter. Is there a way to prevent that so it just updates it with submission, or because when I write the description, it's just doing each like letter and it's not doing like the whole description? I'm not sure why.
This is the common way because you do want to like you get every keystroke. Even if you change this instead of on change, you could also use on input. I'm not sure it will help. Let me check. The common way is to use on change and just take each stroke. But let's say if I use, let me just have it down here so that we'll see it. Without the change handler, you provided the value of the form field without the change handler. No, so they on input it's not working. I think you cannot change it. How was it? It's not accepting something else. Maybe there is some way to do this, what you say, but normally the forms we want it to update with each keystroke. I don't know.
Okay,
why.
and maybe it doesn't
That's how
matter.
the control elements are.
Because it just looks, when I type in the description area, in the project description one specifically, it's
Yes.
console logging the object as having the title, the URL, and then each letter of the description, not the whole description together. And so I don't know if it's something with my like text area, like my input, like using the text area versus the input field, or something else is happening. I'm not sure.
Well, we can try it, but I think if you console log it while you type, it's normal that it shows that it's because it does modify the object with each keystroke. So the on change calls the handle input change, and then this modifies the object. So whenever you change it, and if you console log the object, you will see it like modified with each keystroke. But it's
it just wasn't like adding them. It wasn't adding them together. It was just doing each letter and not like.
Okay, so maybe then it's another error.
I'm not sure. If it's not relevant to all of us, I can troubleshoot or
we can console log it here and so see it. So for now we have this form, we have these three things. Let me just put them a bit nicer. So I will create a grid. Let's see, a grid class, display grid columns, two columns, some gap. And so put this form inside. This grid class. But I'm not loading it. Okay, the admin, the CSS, I need to load up here. Okay. Let me see what is happening on the inspector. Oh, yes, so the grid should be inside the form. This is on the form. Okay, we have the two columns. Now the project description should expand a bit to have two columns. So I'm going to create a class span, two columns. That's going to be starting from column 1 and spanning for 2 columns. And so I'm going to use this class to the element that I want to be longer than the, like, for example, the project description. So this part I wanted to expand. And so I'm going to use this class span 2 columns here. And so that it spans this, and also the button should be centered and occupying 2 columns. I'm going to put this inside the div. And now the only thing missing is to make it so the text area make it occupy the 100% of the element size. Okay. Well, it's not as nice, but anyway, and I can also make it the block, split block, so that and I will actually make input area as well the same. Okay, not as nice, but I think I need to make some container that has some smaller, so this. No, percent. Okay, but then it should be centered. Okay, I'm not going to spend more time here. For the moment, we have it like this. I can try to fix it a bit better so that it looks like this. So let me try to write it to get the information from the form that we have created with the handle input shades and everything. And then when we click the submit button, just console log our console log what this project is now going to be. So when we click the final button, all the different pieces should have been updated because they are being updated while I type in them. So on change, all the different pieces of the project are going to be updated. And then when I click the handle submit, first of all, of course, we need to do this prevent deform for the form so that it doesn't refresh and reload the page. And then I want to see this form button created and my project object and see what I got. So I guess. And sorry, let me just see it here. So when I click submit, form button clicked, and I get this object that has these three pieces of information together, the title, the URL, and the description that I have passed. Right now, of course, this doesn't show anything. This still shows the all projects that were stored, that were just strings, that I have them on the app.js. This project that I had created here, I'm not passing it upwards. So the next step would be to try to pass this information, this piece of information, this project, back up to the parent so that it can save it to the projects array. But let's review the form if there are any questions on how this works. It's just that on React, for every input, we need to do this double thing. One, to connect the value with a piece of the state. So with the variable that we want to store it, we connect it. And also we have a handler for it so that this creates like controlled components, as I said, controlled form inputs. And yes.
We just kind of browse through it now that we have everything with the form. I just want to see how it is now that we have it finalized.
So from the beginning, you mean?
Yeah, I just want to see where it connects to where we put the project title down there. Inside
so we have the state variable here created at the beginning. Normally also the state variables, we always like the first line that we write, it's the data that we're going to use. So up here, as when the function starts, we define these state variables. And we have this project that it's initiated to an empty object. So this is an empty object. And we have this setter function that will help us update the project. So then we have these two handlers, one for the input change. So this handler will help us for each input field whenever something we type updates the project. And the handle submit, it's our final handler when the button submit is clicked. So this function is going to be called when the button is going to be clicked. And then here we have the return part, which returns our template. And we have a form. On submit, it will call the handle submit handler. And then inside the form, we have three input elements. One for the title, and we name it title. It's important that this name here, it's exactly the same as the property of the object. Because like this allows us to update it automatically so that we get the title and we know which property of the object it refers to because they have the same name. So this is the input for the project title and it's called title, the name of it is title. And then we have another input for the project URL and it's called URL. So the name of this input is URL. And the value that will be updating is the one on the project URL property. And then we have this description text area, and it's going to be updating the project.description property. And for all three of them, we call this handle input change function handler whenever a change is happening. And so we get the event And from the event, we get the value and we get the name. And we know that we want to set to this name, this value to update it. So
And
this.
sorry,
Mhm.
for the button at the bottom of the form, we don't have to specify type submit, or do we still need to specify that there?
We don't need to, but it's good that we do that. So if we do it, it's not changing anything, but it is of type submit, yes. But yes, it's good that we do it. The important thing is that we either have the submit part, we either have it on the form or on the button. So the button now, it doesn't have to have any on click or on submit event, because the on submit event, we have it here on the form. So we either do it on the form or we do it on the button. The submit of the button will trigger the submit of the form. So we have the handler here.
So as long as we have it on one, it's
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it's either, but on the button, actually, we cannot have an on submit event on the button. On the button, we can have an on click event, because submit is an event that is happening on forms, not on buttons. So a button cannot understand a submit event. A button triggers a submit that will trigger the submit event of the form. So if we want to put this on the button, we should transform it to an on click event.
So if we were comparing it with view, the on change is our at the v on, right? So okay.
So
But
if we compare it, yes. So in these two things, basically in view, they are happening with the v bind. We do this v on. So I think it was v on, or it was at. No, we do two things. We have
right,
the
like
v model. So it has the v model that it binds something in view. We bind this to the property name, so to the project or title, and this, I think it replaces these two lines. So the v model makes sure that we know with which variable we update, and that it also has some kind of internal process to update it, like this handle input change with the v model.
okay, thank you.
Mele, did it cover you also the question that you have here with the state? Okay.
Yeah, I think thanks. I think that explained it quite clearly, like breaking it down.
Other questions, more questions on the form?
I have a question. So
Yes.
if we wanted to automate like adding an ID to the objects, where would we do that here? Like if we, in the state we had an ID property set to like 0 or whatever, and then add like incrementing it automatically.
So since we create the project here, we could have the ID here and have it even a different piece of information. So we could have it as an ID, set ID, and maybe we initialize it to 0. And then whenever we create a new project, not in the handle input change, because here we just update the bits of the project, but maybe just before we send it upwards, we just add as well project ID to this, and we make sure that with the set ID, I'm updating this ID to be one more to have it ready for the next one. So when I have my project object ready, I could add also the ID to it and then pass it up to the parent and update the ID state so that it's +1. We could also do it on the parent. So we can either do it here or we can have this same thing like a different piece of data on the parent here. And then whenever I receive a new project and before I include it in my projects array, I put this ID to it, like a stamp to it. So whenever we will get to handle add project. So in here in this function, for example, where it actually adds a new project to that array, before adding it, we add an ID to it, and then we also update like this global ID counter. So in both cases, it would work. So let's leave it here for now. And so we could even have the ID defined here, set to like 0. And then simply we update it just at some point before sending it upwards to the parent. So I'm going to take a break before we go to how we pass this information up to the parent, which is actually the last part we are missing, because once we have the information to the parent, then we know how to pass it to the user view. So when we have this information up here and we are able to store it to the projects, we know how to pass the projects to the child. So to pass the project to the user view, we did it before. And then when we have it in the child, we know how to show it with the map. So with the map, we can show all the different bits and pieces of this information, same as we did also with the coffee app. And so then we can try to put the pieces together to complete this also step 3. But let's take 10 minutes break and we continue with how we pass this information upwards and we finish this part.